Thanks for having me. It's nice to be here. I'm finding that, oh, wrong way. I'm finding that it's really useful for us at the Maritime Center to kind of come back, and whether you know us from a long time or have met us more recently, it's likely that we've been doing a lot of different things, and I just would kind of wonder. I'm always curious how people know about the Maritime Center, what their strongest association is. So I'm going to do a quick poll. If you go to the chat, I'd love you to put just like a one sentence or a one word. What is your strongest association, whether it's something you participate in or something that you know about that we do? I would just love to see sort of what you know already. So go to the chat and just throw it in there. Or don't. Oh, there you go. Great. Wooden Boat Festival, Marine Trades, Race to Alaska, Maritime School. Yes, we do all that stuff. Good. 48 North. Oh, that's a bonus question. A lot of people don't know about that one. Excellent. Youth programs. Yes, thank you, Hasi. Worked for Sailor CX. Oh, cool. Excellent. Okay, well, we do all that stuff. I'm gonna keep going. So you didn't name everything, but you got a lot of it. The Maritime Center has grown a lot. All the logos on the bottom are all part of who we are and what we do, but we're a nonprofit that is headquartered here in Port Townsend. We do work now across the whole region. We'll get into some of that. And we've gotten a lot bigger. Right now, this year is going to be our biggest year. We've grown to about a $9 million budget with 60 permanent employees. We flex up with seasonal staff to about 140 in the summer. So we've got a lot of different things that we're doing. But at the root of it is around connecting people to the experiences of the sea. And some of that's in our boat shop, some of that's on the water, some of that's community-based, some of that's individual-based. And I'll kind of rip through a lot of that. But the story of the Maritime Center right now is crazy growth. So this is what we've been doing since this campus opened. We were about a little less than $1.5 million budget, and then kept adding things to do. Race to Alaska, Marine Thrift is something we do. It's a reuse store that's in the boat haven, and we run that to help create affordable ways for people to own boats. We adopted 48 North as a sailing magazine. Port Townsend Maritime Academy is a high school program that we host. We'll talk about that later. And then the pandemic happens, and much like everyone knows that, but we shrank. But then we grew again. We added a Swan Hotel and a few other things. Maritime High School is something we'll talk about. So if all of you run businesses, and so you're in the leadership part of organizations, going from basically tripling in size over a year and a half has been what our story has been for the last year and a half, which has been a ride, one that has defined sort of my experience as well as the organizations, as we get a bunch of new people. We did a staff retreat just last month, and of the 45 people who showed up, less than half of them have worked here more than a year. So it's a huge learning curve for us right now as we kind of gel the team into the next set of operations. It all started with the Wooden Boat Festival, and actually I love that there are people here in the room who were at the first one back in 1977. And other than a couple pandemic years, the Wooden Boat Festival has been every year. And I would say a couple of things you should know as citizens of Port Townsend. You live in a town with the largest wooden boat festival in North America, the second largest in the world. And it's because I've been to a couple others, it's the most fun I've ever had at a wooden boat festival. So hopefully you come and you don't just get annoyed at the traffic, but it's for us, it's a chance for, I always think about it, it's like Port Townsend's in full bloom. For me, I came here because I went to the Wooden Boat Festival and then fell in love with the town because I'm a boat dork at heart. And it's a chance for the boat dorkiest parts of our town to really celebrate ourselves, but also sort of the maritime character that I think defines this town in a way that like you don't find it anywhere else in the world. So it's a celebration of that part of who we are. And last year, I don't know, show of hands, who went last year? No shame for those who didn't. But if you didn't, you missed a really good one. It was. I'm not sure if it was because I was so starved for wooden boat festivals in my life after 2 years of not having them, but it was usually for me, there's always the numbers of like how do we do financially, but the non-financial barometer that I use is how many times do I get called in to solve like an angry customer, and I get zero. This year was zero. Like everyone was just pretty vibing on Port Townsend and being together. It was pretty magic. Sorry you missed it, and congratulations for those of you who were there. We're doing it again this year. Spoiler alert, we're going to do another one this year. So plan on that. Race to Alaska is a newer event for us, but I guess it's actually not that much newer. Well, it's a lot newer. It's not new anymore. We've done it. First one was in 2015. Took a couple years off for COVID, and back again last year. This was one of my favorite years. This was Race to Alaska, Sail Like a Girl when they won. It was an all-female team that won, I think, in 2017. It's a media sensation. So there's kind of the race. There's the ruckus beforehand. That's the street party. There's the race that happens. And then there's a couple 100,000 people around the world that tune in via the internet to watch and follow the tracker. Every boat's got a little tracker on it, so you can follow it on the map. And then we also have a media team that runs around. The fun thing is that the media team actually just put out a feature-length documentary that you can stream on Amazon, which is so fun. And I thought I'd just show you, for those of you who haven't seen it, I thought I'd show you the preview because it's great. I'm biased, but it's a great movie.
The Race to Alaska is truly daring.
Am I stupid? Is this dangerous?
You know you're always on the edge of disaster.
But you just have constant waves splashing in your face, and you're just like, why am I doing this?
When I first heard about the R2AK, I thought, sounds like going to die. I like that. The rules of the race are intentionally as simple as possible. There's a starting line in Port Townsend. There's a finish line in Ketchikan. Up to $10,000 for a first prize. There's a set of steak knives for a second prize. And the only rule is that your boat can't have a motor on board. Things are just boring when they're easy.
It's got to be the only race that I know of where the winner is probably the least interesting thing about the race.
Got a first class crew, very athletic and fit.
I'm in it because it's fun. Cozy, super cozy in here.
We do listen to a lot of reggae and we do try and keep it positive.
This is like sending a guy up into space for the first time. I don't know what to expect.
This is ridiculous. Awesome racing.
There are any number of things that can go wrong. Losing someone overboard, wind against current.
Short, steep seas. Huge whirlpools, they'll just kind of open up.
There's a lot of bears.
And the water being cold. I just look out and see icy death, so how do I avoid icy death?
It's hours upon hours of boredom and beauty with moments of terror and horror.
Last night we got rocked. There were decisions made that were flat out dangerous and irresponsible.
I only search for live people. I don't search for bodies.
This race is about that inner challenge.
It's the fear of the unknown. It's just you. Can you do it?
You are racing against your brain, yourself. I wanted to see what I was capable of.
We're down here next to a waterfall.
Sometimes you just have to keep grinding forward. There's no roads to confine you. You just go.
It's not just a race. This is an opportunity to do that thing, be that person that you always wanted to be.
Yay. I was having a conversation with people. We do a lot of what we do for a lot of different reasons all at once. Certainly, both with the Wooden Boat Festival and Race to Alaska, a big part of the motivation is to recenter. I always think about the center of gravity in the maritime world, and how can we keep shifting it closer to Port Townsend so that we can keep our marine trades and sort of the maritime vibe here strong. I also realized that there is, kind of the source code of what we do at the Maritime Center, and what many of you do as well, is to create relationships between people and this world in a meaningful way. And I think wooden boats do that because people have a relationship, an intentional relationship with the medium of wood. And Race to Alaska being an engineless boat race, you have to have a unity with the forces around you. So it's about creating that relationship with the water. So there's I think in all these, we're creating Port Townsend opportunities, but we're also creating personal connections to this incredible place that we live. Wait, I don't want to go forward. And also, I wanted to point out that we're creating movie stars. Look at that. I am a movie star. It says so on Amazon, so it must be true. I also like that because my name's first, and I'm not going to admit that it's alphabetical. I'm just going to say it's because I'm a movie star. I also have an IMDb page now because of this, which I think is hilarious. Anyway, also, those of you who know Daniel Evans, he's been the race boss for, he was race boss for 7 years. He's now a Chimacum High School shop teacher. So we put out this looks like he's dead. He's not dead. He's just dead to us. He's moved on. He's a great shop teacher. He's teaching kids. They're lucky kids. Is our loss though, for sure. He'll be missed. One of the things that we learned through the Race to Alaska was just how powerful storytelling can be, and this medium of maritime can be when it's done well. And so in 2017, we acquired 48 North magazine, which is the kind of sailing magazine of record in the Pacific Northwest. And we acquired it because it was going to go away. And we thought it's an important part of our community. It's an important part of like storytelling, getting people engaged in the water. So it's a magazine that distributes about 20,000 copies a month. It's free to the reader, and we distribute between, it goes to Alaska, but it's mostly like between Portland, Oregon, and Vancouver, British Columbia. And it's great. It was a little bit of a turnaround business for us, but it's now revenue generating and helps offset our operating costs, which is what it's supposed to do. A big part of what we do, as you all know, is education, and some of that is for adults, and we have everyone from Puget Sound pilot trainees who come here and use our simulator. This woman was a recreational boater who was apparently doing some heavy weather drill or something. So on our third floor, we have this fairly state-of-the-art simulator that is the same software that they have at Maritime or any of the big maritime schools, but it's the only place where recreational boaters can get a part of it, or seventh graders can be a part of it, or our high school students can be a part of it. It's great for recreational boaters because they can come here and we teach radar classes and other things, because it's often there are things like radar or electronic navigation that people realize they need to know after they needed to know it, where they're in some sort of, they've gotten into a trouble, they're in the dark, they're in the fog, and they're trying to like madly poke buttons, and it's, so we can teach them here in a much safer environment. And as I like to say, virtual shipyards are cheaper than actual shipyards. So if they get into a crash, we just hit reset. But it's in your town. It's something you can come, and we give tours of it too in the summers, I think. A big part of what we do, as you all know, are our youth-facing programs. And this is an old picture now, but this is a picture of one of our 7th grade programs. And what you may or may not know is that every 7th grader in the county goes through either a 1 or 2 week program of maritime immersion, where the school bus drops them off at our campus, and our instructors teach alongside of their regular classroom teachers for their regular classroom subjects. It's just has a maritime overlay to it. So you can imagine, if you remember 7th grade algebra, as I know you all do, it was pretty abstract, or there was like 2 trains headed towards Cleveland or something. So instead of that, we'll give them paper chart. We'll do time, speed, distance, navigation planning. So they're applying the same concepts, but they're just doing it in a way that is immediately applicable and related to their hometown. And it's immediately applicable because, conceptually, right after math class, they'll go out in our longboats, which are the rowing and sailing boats, and they'll navigate to the navigation plans they made in math class and PE class while they learn to row and sail. And they'll come back in and they'll learn that the first charts of the area were made by Peter Puget, and boats very similar to that. And they build a boat like this every year and they launch it. It's a great program, and one that also has a lot of engagement from Marine trades, where they do site visits, and they learn that not only is this something you can do in 7th grade, but there are plenty of people in this community that do it for their career, which is really, it's a great way. It's almost like Port Townsend citizenship class in a different way, like maritime citizenship class, where people get really involved. So we built off of that over the years, and we've done some target population. We have something called the Girls Boat Project, which gets young middle school girls and female shipwrights and mariners building boats. And they build some wonky boats sometimes, but it's not about the boat itself. It's about like the act of building it. It's about diversifying sort of the shop space and empowering young girls to be incredible. And it's great. We also have a program called Real World Readiness, which works with our court systems. And this is some that we've been doing for 4 or 5 years now. And it started as an alternative sentencing program where rather than whatever other punishment they were going to be meted out, they would come, and it's a paid internship where they court appointed youth will come to us. They'll learn boat shop skills. Like that's the overlay, but really they're learning just like job skills, which is like show up on time, how to punch in, punch out. And for some of them, it's the first paycheck their family system has had in it in a long time. There's things I like to brag about this program. So far, I think we have around a 90% non-recidivism rate, which is like after 4 years, 90% of these kids who go through our program haven't reoffended, which is way better than any other program I've ever heard of, actually. And when you think about the cost of diverting a troubled life, from the trouble it was headed towards, it's pretty cool. There's also some stories out of this program that always make me cry a little bit, and I'm gonna cry now. There's the kid who was living with his family in his car, who used his paycheck to get out of the car and into an apartment, was re-inspired to get back into school, enrolled in the Maritime high school program we have here, turned his mock interview, as all students do mock interviews with some marine trades businesses, turned his mock interview into an actual interview, was hired, and is still working in the trades. And now he's got an apartment for himself, and he's got a different apartment for his family. It's one of the best things we do, and we're about to expand it. We just got some funding to expand it to not just students who have offended, but those they're calling them youth of opportunity, which is youth that have been identified as high risks for offending in the future. So we're doing sort of preemptive work, trying to head people off the path before they end up in the court system. That'll happen soon. Anyway, it's a great program. All of that led to a high school program that was started by Kelly Watson and us. This is the Port Townsend Maritime Academy. It's now in its 3rd year, maybe 4th year, 3rd year. And it's a career and technical education program where students from anywhere who can get to the Port Townsend can enroll in a half-day, full-year program where they not only get graduation credits, but they get skills and certifications that are immediately make them employable in the maritime industry. And we've had students as far south as Gig Harbor show up. And we even had one year, we had some students from Coopville who would ride the ferry over and would miss class on, given certain tidal cycles, which I thought was very maritime. That was great. It was the best excuse ever. It's a fantastic program. And Kelly Watson, who has moved on to a different job at this point, but as the last graduation, she just, as a point in time, she said, texted all of her old students and said, "Show me a picture where you are now, just right now." And there were pictures from engine rooms in the Caribbean and ferry decks in Bainbridge Island, people on tugboats, people in maritime academies. It's about somewhere right around 40% of the students that go through this end up going on to either directly working in the maritime world or doing the post-secondary education. Like we have a student in Matt's in Cal Maritime, his 3rd year now of Cal Maritime, which is pretty cool. Anyway, it's another way of us engaging people in the industry that I think really defines this town. I always forget, we have summer camps, and they're filling up now. So if you have kids or grandkids, you want to get them to summer camps, you better sign up fast. There's also chances for adults to learn how to sail. We have U.S. sailing certified classes in a lot of different things for whether and also for experienced boaters. So regardless of where you are, from total interest beginner to not quite sailing ninja, then we have a place for you to learn here. All of that led to a slide that's broken, but basically the left half of the slide was supposed to depict the Port Townsend Maritime Academy, which, when there were some folks in Seattle thinking about how to change the regional conversation about youth maritime education, learned about the Port Townsend Maritime Academy, came and visited, and then asked the Northwest Maritime Center to help start the region's first standalone maritime high school, which we did a couple years ago. For some reason, there's this picture. And it's a 4-year standalone school where maritime is at the focus, the central focus of it. It's in the Highline School District, which is just south of Seattle. We've got 3 staff that work down there full time. And it's kind of doing the same thing we do here, which is support the school district with the boaty stuff, where school districts don't like owning boats, putting kids on the water, getting kids near shop equipment, but we do all that. And it's in its 2nd year, so we started with a freshman class. The sophomore class just started, so there'll be juniors next year. And the idea is it's not a career technical education. It's kind of like the 7th grade program I was telling you about, where everything is just taught through a maritime lens, which means some students will go into the maritime world, some students will just be fully informed and excited about the maritime world. But it's an exciting project. So this is the worst slide I've ever created, but I love it at the same time. Essentially, we do a lot of different things at the Maritime Center, especially in education, but from the widest part of the funnel of getting people involved, like the Wooden Boat Festival, or some of the campus tours, or just people want to come down and throw rocks on our beach. It's public. All of the exterior spaces at the Northwest Maritime Center are actually public. It was part of the easement that was given to the Maritime Center for some funding from the city. So it's your waterfront park that you don't have to pay tax dollars for anymore. So people come down, you're welcome to come down and enjoy it. All of this happens, a piece of this happens in other organizations. I don't know of another organization in the world where it all happens under a single roof or a single structure. And that's kind of the beauty, is that you can show up as a 4-year-old who just wanders in, and then you can end up a Puget Sound pilot, and you can have an experience all the way through. And so it's about looping people in so they can choose their own adventure and really get in touch with the water. That's what we do. Where we do it is this campus, and it's expanding. A year ago, January, we purchased the Swan Hotel across the street, and to quash all rumors, it's still a hotel. We operated, the staff came over. Our plan is to continue to operate as a hotel, and eventually we might redevelop some of the site to add more space for us. There's a lot of sort of empty space, but in all of our plans, lodging and accommodations is a part of it. Our goal is to better connect our programs, especially in the off season, to kind of stay and learn model. So here's a dirty secret: nonprofit programs always lose money, and they're usually supposed to, because we're trying to make them affordable. So we've always been limited by how much education and opportunities can we afford to provide to people. The hotel, in addition to being a hedge, we bought it strategically because it's the only privately held piece of property contiguous to our campus, and we were already kind of busting at the seams. So thinking about the future, we thought we're probably gonna need more space. This is a smart way to do it, and especially smart if we can increase their off season, our September through April program offerings when we have slack. And also, we tend to think in sort of multiple wins at the same time. It's like, what's good for our mission, but also like what's good for Port Townsend, and trying to increase the off-season GDP for downtown Port Townsend feels like an important thing, and something we could try to do by adding more classes in the off-season. So by connecting classes to room nights helps us answer the question of how much education do people want, rather than how much can we afford to give them. And it helps move, we're hoping it helps move the needle on, Port Townsend's downtown GDP off season, specifically when we can move the needle. There's another building. We also secured this lease back here. That building's not there. That's just a drawing. Don't go looking for it. We secured a 30-year lease on that 2 years ago now, year and a half ago now. And our plan is to build and develop a new building there to help with some sort of mission related space. And we're just starting to really do some due diligence planning on what that is. But it's going to be related to classes, community access, our mission for sure. Not a trinket shop. We're not opening a trinket shop, Carol. That's part of the lease. Not that you were worried about that, but like someone at the port was. A thing that is exciting that we're also working on right now for our campus is, some of you might have heard that in, I don't know, a couple of 3 years ago now, National Heritage Area was declared for most of the coastline of Washington, from Grays Harbor all the way up around the peninsula, then down to Olympia, then back up. Basically, what a heritage area is a national parks designation that says this is a culturally significant area. And the coast and sort of the inland waterways of Washington was designated as such. And the Maritime Center is an anchor institution. What does that mean? Not much, really. But we, what's more interesting is that we're in the process of doing a pilot project where, for this Maritime Heritage Area, to create a better point of entry into the maritime world by basically retooling our retail space, the chandlery, into something that's a little bit more like a visitor center. Think of like a national park. When you show up at Hurricane Ridge, there's like, there's a desk where you can ask like, how do I get involved? The goal of the Maritime Heritage Area, and sort of lines up with the goal of the Maritime Center, which is to really translate and celebrate and engage people in the maritime world. And Port Townsend is such an epicenter for incredible maritime activity. We needed it to have a front door. So that's kind of what we're working on right now, is a design for that. It also lines up with a long-time effort we've had to make our campus a little more understandable for people. What we've learned is that people who have signed up for classes or people who have already been here, like, it's a great campus. But if you're just wandering in and you don't know how to engage with it, we need a front door too. So this is some of the conceptual, this is like hot off the presses, very conceptual, about how the inside might get retooled. One of the things we learned is that the most commonly asked question, other than where's the bathroom, that our retail staff get asked is, where's the museum? Because we're not really a museum, but we're kind of a museum, but people expect us to be a museum. So part of us is like, well, maybe we should add some interpretation so people can not wonder where the museum is a little bit. Not that we're going to be a museum. I don't want to start a fight with Jefferson Historical Society. But some museum-like elements that maybe point to the museum. Like, if you want a museum, go down the street 2 blocks. Or if you want to go on a whale watch boat, go the other way a block. Or if you want to go out sailing, if you want to check out some cool boats, like, here's the Martha, here's the house. Like, do a better job of sort of wayfinding for people, and need to be in touch with the Marine Trades Association about how much we want to really point people to the boatyard, because we might not want to point people to the boatyard because we actually need to get some work done. So we're beginning to work on all of that, but expect some remodeling to be happening in the next year to 18 months. Another thing, this is a new toy that we got about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. The Admiral Jack is our newest, biggest boat. And it used to be a foot ferry between Port Orchard and Bremerton. It was a Sam Devlin project that we were donated it. And it fills kind of 2 roles. One, it's a floating classroom. So inside there's like, floating classroom mode, it's got science equipment, and we're doing water sampling, and we take out school kids. In mode 2, it's an excursion boat, and we can turn and flip it back over. It's inspected for 49 passengers. Last year we did some experimenting about how to get people on the water from our dock, because one of the things I've been most embarrassed about for the 12 years that I've worked here is when people come in the summer and they say, how do I get on the water? And I was like, well, you can sign up for a sailing lesson that's already filled up, or you can get on that whale watching boat that just left, or you can go down the other end of town and look for Amber and take sailing lessons from her. But for just people who don't want to, they just want to get on the water, there hasn't really been a good option for that, other than the ferry. You can go ride the ferry back and forth. So we tested it. I think we're going to do a little bit more of it this summer. So it'll be another sort of an amenity for people to do, just kind of a low cost. I think last year was $10 or something. we have a feasibility study underway about potentially connecting it to Fort Flagler. So doing a scheduled service off their dock. And we're going to try to pilot that a couple times this year. And we were in contact with Fort Worden about that too a number of years ago, but now with that facility sort of in flux. And also just thinking about like a ferry run really only makes sense when it saves you time or gets you somewhere where it would be really hard to go. So getting across a mouth of a long bay, it works out. It would be about a 30-minute run, and it would connect. What I learned is there's 900,000 people a year that go to Fort Flagler. And my guess is, again, thinking about downtown GDP, how much could we move the needle if we could connect a greater portion of them to downtown? And also, like, for me as a resident, I would love to go to Fort Flagler more often than I do it. If there's a fun boat ride to go do it, I think that'd be fun. So probably a pilot project this year. We're in talks with state parks about if it works, there might need to be like more docks out there because anyway, there's a lot to figure out, but so this isn't a done deal. Let's not spread any rumors. We're experimenting, but boy, wouldn't it be cool. I would really like it. So what's next for us? Much like many of you over the last, I don't know, year or so, we've really been thinking critically about housing. It came up for us through a staff listening session where there was enough anxiety of the staff members here and enough barrier to hiring people from here that we just held a listening session, and there was about 30 of our staff showed up just to like express how anxious they were about housing or how much stress it was causing for their life. And so we've been kind of hustling to get smarter about what is the housing that we can help support, housing reform we can help support. Are there any housing solutions we can help create? Not that housing is our mission, but it's become a critical path for us delivering our mission. We even looked at, like, does it make any sense to take the Swan offline? It really doesn't for housing. So we're still looking at, are there any sort of employer related housing that we're gonna somehow be involved with for our staff? I've had some conversations with some folks on the phone here about, does it make any sense for there to be sort of a maritime sector housing solution where we help support, I worry about the housing getting out of control and making it absolutely unaffordable for the mainstay of our economy, the maritime sector, for those tradespeople to continue to work here, or that at some point the commute becomes so long that I could see the industry moving. So how do we create solutions where that doesn't happen? Because I think if the Maritime Center ends up being a maritime center in a formerly maritime town, I think I have failed. So that is one of the things that I need to keep pushing on, and we're going to keep doing that. I already talked about the campus expansion, so we don't have to talk about that. We don't do workforce development. We don't train shipwrights. We don't train professional mariners. We're kind of the wide part of the funnel where, the 7th grader of today is the ship captain 15 years from now. And that's what we're focusing on. But we're trying to get better at articulating better and making sure that the instruction that we're giving in 7th grade actually lines up to the instruction that they're going to be giving in community colleges or maritime universities. So we've been in conversation with Seattle Maritime Academy about how to do that better, as well as I've been in contact with some legislators who are interested in starting a maritime academy, like either a community college or a 4-year college somewhere on the Olympic Peninsula. And I think that's like a very far horizon, but I think it would be cool if it was here. So more updates on that as anything like that happens, but it's just kind of a whisper in the wind at this point. One of the things we're working on is for the maritime industry, and especially as if any of you have been following developments in offshore wind power generation that is about to blow up on the West Coast in a massive way, like in a way that I've never seen in industrial mobilization in my lifetime. There is a real opportunity for increasing our recruitment from populations who have been not really connected to the maritime industry or could be connected more. And I think about sort of the two populations I think about are sort of urban communities of color and then the rural poor. people that, in the rural communities like ours, a job at sea is great because you don't have to move because your job is always not here. So you can go to sea and then come back. And for the economic development side, it's, these jobs pay upwards of $100,000, and at entry level they're probably 70. So after going through our high school program, you could not move and instead import a paycheck over and over and over again. So that's economic development, and mostly that is in the crux of that is in recruitment. And then recruitment for me means not just making people and families aware of the opportunity, but making sure that in 7th grade they're already kind of thinking about it. Then in high school they're already kind of thinking about it. So by the time it comes to like choose a career path, the first one anyway, that it's not a right turn, but it's just an obvious conclusion. So we're looking at that not just here and not just in Seattle, but our work has sort of inspired some other opportunities popping up. There's a skill center program that's trying to get started in Tacoma. One's trying to get started in Kent. I think Shelton's kind of looking at it a little bit. So is Marysville. So there's this opportunity to better connect all of these and coordinate them so that there's just better understanding regionally what the opportunity is, so that we can, as a state and as rural communities, really capitalize on this opportunity, especially the offshore wind. It's going to be massive. The first leases in California went for $750 million. So it's like serious money is going to go into this. So and it's all going to be floating. It's all going to be 30 miles offshore. So the maritime world is about to blow up on the West Coast. And this last one is, I don't know if you saw all the logos at the bottom of the first slide, but there's too many. So we're trying to do a better job of like getting rid of some logos and consolidating. So it's just a little bit easier for us to understand. And because the hardest thing that I still do is tell people everything that we're doing, because we're complicated and most people don't give me 40 minutes to do that. So thanks for giving me the time. I think it's really exciting. There's the thing that I get inspired by, and I think as community members you should be proud by as well, is that in a lot of different ways, maritime innovation, especially in maritime education, Port Townsend is exporting that to the rest of the region. So it's in terms of like expertise, you don't often hear about rural communities innovating for urban centers. Usually people tell the story of the other direction. And I know it's not just us that's doing it. There's a lot of that happens in this town. And I think it's something we should all be proud of, especially in the maritime space. And I think that's the end. That's what I got, Arlene. I'm going to stop sharing. Thanks for letting me talk for as long as I did. Happy to take as many questions as we have time for.
Well, we have a couple that came in, Jake, and thank you for all of that. And so the burning question is, what do you do in your spare time?
I don't have any. I'm going to grad school right now.
I can't imagine. So, you talked about Wooden Boat Festival being the second largest in the world. And the question that came in is, what's the first?
It's Hobart, but that's only every other year.
Ah, well,
but it's also like 500,000 people. So I don't personally want to aspire to that.
Good thought, because I don't know where we're going to put all of those people. It's hard enough, like just, filling up most of the peninsula for Wooden Boat. And then Ashlyn had a question about the youth programs that you had and relative to L&I restrictions on the under 18 versus over 18. Are those programs restricted to over 18?
They are not, and I don't know how we I don't know how we comply with L&I, but I'm sure we do. And Ashlyn, I can get back to you on that. Oh, thing I forgot to mention about summer camps, though, a lot of people don't know, we have a pretty robust scholarship program. And so we've recently changed our pricing theory, is that we were trying to keep the prices artificially low so people could enter. And what we realized is that we're changing so that we're going to actually charge what they're worth, what their cost, but then offer a lot of scholarships. So if people are interested, if you know people who are interested in the summer camps, but we're trying to do a better job of saying like, just ask and we'll get you in.
So if you have any other questions, put them in the chat, because I know Jake wants to answer them. And I think one of the ones that came in on Facebook and really affects all of us is the bridge closures this summer. And it's just affecting everyone. And through Optic, we've been working on that through the chamber and our visitor partners since last August, I think, July or August, when this all came out. And while we're still talking to WashDOT, they have to fix the bridge at some point. It needs work, and better to schedule it than to have it just happen. So what contingency plans for all of your summer projects are in place, given that the bridge is probably going to be closed a little bit this summer?
We were most worried about, I mean, we have things every weekend, but we were most worried about Wooden Boat Festival. I mean, that's the killer.
We worked really hard to eliminate that weekend, which was in the original plan.
Yeah.
From the schedule, but we couldn't get rid of all of it. And so, yeah, it will impact us. And so we were glad we could just migrate it from Wooden Boat, but that went to, challenge other organizations and other events. So there was no good time. And while we're still working with them, and so are all of our partners in the community and government, it's not going to change that much. I think it's just the general feeling.
Yeah, there was a moment when they were still thinking that they might have to start the jetty repair in June. And I was just like, well, we're gonna have the jetty repair, and then the bridge is gonna be like, I just felt like throwing in the towel. It was just too much. But
so we shouldn't add the roundabout to that equation, right? At Kearney.
Yeah, well, there's also the roundabout. I think they're doing it at the Hood Canal Bridge, right?
Yes,
That's
the
happening.
104, 101. Yeah.
Yeah, we should all just go home for a year and then come back. Like, it's like, let's do like COVID part 2.
I know, that's kind of what it feels like, right? And it's in a bad time for all of our businesses, of course. And we're all working, and we'll loop you into that too, on trying to do some mitigation. What can we do to help people migrate their plans to midweek instead of weekends, and how can hospitality and maritime and tourism all work together? So we'll kind of get you engaged. And I see a few questions coming into the chat. So boy, that would be so good. Any option for a fast foot ferry arrangement?
We were talking with the Hankies last year about that, and for some reason it didn't. I can't remember why it didn't end up happening, but we active conversations for sure. Yeah. Good
to know. Keep us all looped in. And yes, it doesn't have to be permanent. We would take temporary at this point. Yeah. So other questions from the team?
I have a question.
Okay.
So that was pretty long. How do us as business owners in the community help sell what you're doing and promote that? Is there some condensed version I can tell people when they ask me, like, oh, this is what they do actually, instead of, all right, here's your PowerPoint, let's do it. And also, like, how can we help promote you further? I mean, I love having you guys around, but in the chat, obviously, I didn't really know exactly what you do. I've grown up here. So, how can I help?
Buster, I feel like I wish I would have been clever enough to ask you to ask that. That's the greatest chill question ever. So there's a couple answers in there. There is, depending on how you want to get involved, there's lots of different ways for businesses to be involved and support. So there's, the festival is, it's really a community festival. Like, we organize it, but there are 1,500 volunteer shifts that community members and others come to, like, help celebrate. So, like, in terms of how to get involved, there's like volunteerism. There's certainly sponsorships. I know Edensaw has been a sponsor in the past. That's always helpful. Those are probably the two biggest, like, volunteering and sponsoring in terms of support, and then spreading the word. We're working on, in addition to cleaning up sort of the brand logo soup that we have, we're working on changing our story. But, like, the tightest I get is that no matter who you are or the depth of your interest in sort of the water and maritime, like, we're a engagement and education organization that has something for you. And that's true whether you're super casual or like a Puget Sound pilot. And mostly it's here. The most stuff we do is here, but we also have some programs elsewhere. So that's the condensed version. For those who are interested in learning more, we're starting up tours again. So we have, you'd think I'd know the schedule, but I don't. It's about once a week that we're providing tours sort of familiarization where, in case I didn't talk enough at you about what we do, someone else could give you sort of a tour of the campus and give you the next level deeper too. Because there's also things I didn't hit, like we have a boat shop where you can like rent space and build your own boat under some tutelage from our staff, or like there's also, that's the place you can go and see amazing professional shipwrights work. Right now, Robert Darcy and his crew are building the mast for the Tally Ho in there, and it's, if you've ever want to witness perfection in wood, it's those guys working on anything, but it's particularly when they make spars, it's amazing, the talent. It looks, by the time they're done, it looks like a machine printed it. Like it's perfect. It's amazing.